Good morning. My friend's apartment is getting shown today, so I'll be outside all day. I don't have an inside to go to, but that's extremely positive. And it's extremely positive for two reasons. One, I heard a quote the other day that I see as true, which is never trust a thought that you have indoors. And something about that is true. When you're inside, thoughts can be caged in and a little bit more on the side of depressing or anxious. But when you're outside, there's just a slight uplift. So that's the first reason. I get to be outside all day. Extremely positive. And the second reason is that it is a lovely day. It is a beautiful spring day. We're blessed. I feel a chapter of my life is coming to an end. And it's a beautiful feeling because when a chapter of your life comes to an end, it reminds you of what is important. And it washes away all of the trivial things that we sometimes get caught up worrying about. It's synonymous with dying. It's an end. And the only way that I can tell you what I want to say about it is through a story. When I was living in my van in Florida, I had to get a job in order to make money and to get food and gas and survive. And I was working in a coffee shop, and the coffee shop had a drive-thru. And one day this man and his girlfriend came through the drive-thru. They were about my age. And I saw that he was wearing a cross necklace. And I said, "Hey, I really like your cross." And part of the reason why I did it is I didn't really like the job. I didn't mind. I was grateful for the job, but I didn't like it. And there was a lot of negativity there, as with most places. And I wanted to put myself in a bubble of optimism and positivity and kindness. So I was being kind to other people. And he thanked me, and it was casual. But something fascinating happened, which is the next day, a man and his girlfriend came through the drive-thru. And I complimented this man's cross, not knowing that it was the same guy. And it was a fast-paced store. The drive-thru was moving pretty quick, so he was in and out. But when I complimented him 2 days in a row, without missing a beat, he was like, "Oh, if you like my cross, why don't you wear one?" And I'll explain why I wasn't wearing one on this day. And I told him briefly, as quickly as I could, because it was a drive-thru. And his response is, "Well, I'm going to buy you one." And then he started to drive off, and he was offering to give me a gift. It was a stranger offering to give me a gift to help me, to show kindness. And my reaction is, anytime somebody tries to do something for me, I'm like, no, you don't have to do that. Don't do that. But it was a weird predicament that I was in, because I literally had just complimented his cross, and he felt compelled to get me one. And so how, if I'm complimenting his cross, something meaningful to him, and then he wants to get me one, how would I deny him giving me that gift? I'm bad at receiving gifts. I'm bad at allowing help or asking for help or doing anything that isn't being a lone wolf, honestly. But in that situation, I had to accept it, because it would have been inverted for me to not accept it. It would have been, although we do that for the right reasons, we deny gifts because it's better to give than to receive. If I would have denied him giving me this gift, that would have been the wrong thing to do. The right thing to do was to allow the gift. And only a few days prior to this interaction, I had been wearing a cross around my neck. I was in Ocala, Florida, and I spent a bunch of time at a park. And a few days prior, I had lost the cross that I wore around my neck. And it wasn't just any cross. This cross was a few years prior to this time now. My grandpa had gotten diagnosed with cancer. And when he got diagnosed with cancer, he was the type of man who worked in a factory, and he was always mowing the yard and doing work in his garage, and he maybe would isolate himself a little bit. He was beat down by life, by the monotony of life, and there's a Nas song, "Life's Up and Then You." And I had a baseball coach who was in the same generation of my pap. And the baseball coach used to always say that phrase, not referencing Nas, but that was just his perspective on life. Life's up and then you. And a lot of people from that generation had that sort of cold attitude towards life. They got caught up in the monotony of the day-to-day work that they were doing. They weren't satisfied in the work or the things they were seeing happening around them. Maybe they didn't have a lot of joy in their heart, and so a lot of people from that generation, my grandpa's generation, have that attitude. But when my pap got told that he had 6 months to a year to live, it was only a few weeks, maybe a month, and this Bible quote, "Teach me the brevity of life, and that way I can know wisdom." The circumstances, his experience in life had given him the opposite of that. He was living as though life was just going to go on forever, and the thing that was going to go on forever was like a torment. It was a monotonous torment. But then he was told that he only had 6 months to a year to live, and everything did a 180-degree turn. Whereas before, his mindset was like the opposite of "teach me the brevity of life and I'll know wisdom." He then tangibly could see the brevity of his own life, and he started to behave in a way that was wise. He was kind. He became one of the most humble men that I have ever met. He was patient, and whereas when I was younger, he wasn't going to a lot of sporting events, he realized the error in those ways, and now he was spending all of his time with his grandkids and his kids and his wife. And what was once important to him, it was good. He worked in a factory, and he supported his family, and he did what needed to be done. But he realized clearly that all of that was kind of pointless if it weren't for... All of that was for his family, but he wasn't going full circle and giving... He was loving his family through his sacrifice, but there wasn't joy in his heart. But then his cancer brought back the joy in his heart, and there's a visible image that I'm reminded, that I can see in my mind of him, and the difference between what before he had cancer and after he got cancer. He was always wearing a crucifix. He never wore that before, but he was always wearing a crucifix, and his voice was different, and he had a complete character change. And after he passed away, I got a gift from him through my Nana, and it was that crucifix. Wasn't the crucifix that he wore. He bought another one and gave me the duplicate. He gave his son, my uncle, the one that he wore, which was good because my uncle is more responsible than me and almost certainly still has it, whereas I have lost the one that he gave me. But it's pretty surreal how I had lost the cross, the crucifix that was so important to me. I was devastated. And then a few days later, this absolute stranger comes through the drive-through, offers to buy me a cross, which I could have bought my own. They're not very expensive, but and I had one that I bought on my own, but I didn't wear it because I was so apprehensive to losing it. But part of the sentimental value, pretty much all of the sentimental value, was that it came from my pap. But this new cross that I got, it had sentimental value as well because it came from a stranger. And one of the things that I struggle with is trusting strangers. I mean, it probably comes off in my videos, and I work on it, but I often have a lone wolf mentality. I feel like I've got friends and family that I'm incredibly close to, but besides that, I kind of feel like the whole world is against me, and it's not good. It's something I struggle with. It's not good. And so this stranger then giving me this glorious gift. I'd been alone for 2 years prior, traveling in my vehicle, and I just began to come back into a normal world where I was working at this coffee shop. And prior to working at the coffee shop, there'd be plenty of days where the whole day would pass and I would be in the shower at the gym, and I'd just be reflecting in the shower, realizing I had not spoken any words that day. I'd literally interacted with no human being, and it became incredibly lonely. And in the same way that my pap worked his whole life and sacrificed for the people that he loved, but then he came full circle and he had the actual gold, which the sacrifice for people is good, but actually being there with them, being present with them, cherishing them, that is everything. That is actually the meaning of life. And I know people talk about the meaning of life often, and we have purpose, we have things that we're supposed to do, but our purpose is all meaningless if we don't share it with others. And so he came full circle, and he immersed himself in the meaning of life and what is actually important, the people around him and his wife and his grandchildren, the people that he loves. And when a few days after this stranger offered to buy me a cross, he gave it to one of my co-workers to give to me. They gave it to me, and I never saw him again. But I'm grateful because I don't know if this makes sense, but it reminded me the meaning of life. It reminded me that this world, this life, this experience, we're not meant to accomplish great things, especially not for the sake of accomplishing great things and being alone for the sake of a legacy that we can produce. It's all of the ego. The great things that we accomplish and that we're meant to accomplish, it is nothing if we don't share it with each other. It is nothing if we are not there for each other.